15 years ago today, March 11th, 2008, on the USA Network, they had a country-themed talk show called GAC Nights, Great American Country. And the guest 15 years ago tonight was one of my faves, Tift Merritt. She was promoting her album, Another Country, which she wrote when she decided to camp out in Paris and do the whole artist thing very successfully. I look at her as sort of like a more grown-up female, Ryan Adams, and their career paths crossed. I mean, Ryan helped promote her, wink, wink. She first came to attention when she won Merle Fest in 2000. That led to her wonderful Bramble Rose debut album on Lost Highway. She's the real deal. Wish she'd be noisier. Not noisy to the degree of Ryan Adams, who puts out so much stuff. It's hard to weed through it, even with weed.
Hey, welcome back to GAC Nights. She made her debut in 2002, receiving critical acclaim for her CD, Bramble Rose. Her follow-up CD, Tambourine, received a Grammy nomination for Best Country Album. Here to talk about her latest release, which is already receiving critical acclaim, the CD, Another Country. Welcome, Tift Merritt.
Thank you.
Good to finally get you here.
Thank you so much.
Congratulations on this great album.
Thank you.
Let's talk about the life of an artist.
Okay.
Non-stop touring. I mean, from the time Bramble Rose, and obviously you recorded prior to that CD that we all came to know.
Right.
But it seems like it's just really kind of from the get-go, every single week you guys are on the road.
I think to be an artist today, you really are on the road constantly working record. So, yeah, for the better part of the past 5 years I've been working on the road or writing a record, which it's really nice to be off the road and writing a record.
To have a little break. And
Yeah.
for people that may not know the story behind this, and you could log on to Tift's website and MySpace because you tell a beautiful story even before we get to the music.
Thank you.
It's so enjoyable to listen to. But Tift made the move and the decision to head to Paris and take a break, because was it the case of just being burnt out? I mean, did you?
Actually, I was tired from so much touring, and I had kind of not been home in so long that I wasn't even sure if it was home anymore. But also, I was going to Europe to do the last leg of touring, and I honestly didn't know what was next. I thought, I don't know what's next. Maybe I should take a vacation. And so when I went to France, I really thought it was only going to be 2 weeks, maybe. And as soon as I got there and I had this piano in the apartment, I called him. I said, I think I'm going to stay a little longer.
But how did you do that when you have, all right, listen, I mean, we look at you as, this artist, you've got people that depend on you. You've got a band, you travel a lot.
No, to me, that's not what being an artist means at all. To me, that's what being a working musician means. That's what being a public persona means. That's what being a performer is about. But to me, being an artist is a completely private, introverted, introspective thing. So the writing and that point of view that's personal and handmade facilitates the rest of the blah blah blah. And so if that part is out of sync, you really have to run away to Paris and get it right.
So they weren't surprised by you saying, "Listen, I need some time. This is what I'm going to do."
Everybody was really understanding about it. And at the end of the day, my work is really centered on my writing. I wouldn't get up on stage if I didn't think I had something important enough to say that I thought maybe you should listen. So the writing makes way for everything else, and so I didn't feel guilty about taking some time.
Let me ask you this: why Paris? I mean, it sounds like you could have gone anywhere, but what was the attraction?
Well, I've always had a thing for France. I had a cousin who was a writer and a soldier in France in World War I, and I knew the stories about him, and I felt a little bit kindred. And I studied French in school, and I always understood it in a very musical way. It's a very musical language, and so I don't know, I thought I could get by there on the bit of French that I knew, and I mean, it's an extremely romantic city with a history of writing and art, and so Honestly, it was one of those great things that I didn't think so much about it at the time. Everything was very natural, and I thought, oh, I'll take a vacation with a piano. Oh, I'll stay. And, it just unfolded very naturally, and that was what was so nice about it, is that it wasn't overwrought.
Yeah. How long before, when you get to Paris, that you start getting the inspiration to write? Because reading about it, it seemed like it was just a nonstop for you.
It was.
Did it come pretty quick?
Pretty incredible. I hadn't woken up in the same place for a consecutive string of nights in a long time, and to wake up for a consecutive string of nights in Paris is pretty inspiring. So once I think I caught up on my sleep and did my laundry, I was very surprised, because at the time I didn't really think I had anything to say. So when I did start to write, which was really just a few days after I was there, it was like it made me laugh, because it was such a surprise. I had not planned to write a record. I had no expectations, and I was off on an adventure, and it was really so much fun when I found this open world in Paris, and it sort of opened me.
You know, there are so many people watching at home, and I would be one of them if I wasn't here going, that's what I want to do. And you knew no one when you went, did you?
I knew one. I had an acquaintance that I knew.
So you knew no one, basically. I mean, just an acquaintance. I mean, to go there,
yeah.
I mean, no fear.
No, I've never been afraid of being alone or traveling, and I actually like to be alone. So it wasn't that. But I find that traveling and getting outside of your own culture, you really have to deal with people on a very elemental level, where you say, I'm sick, I'm lost, can I have a cup of coffee? And you're stumbling with a language or customs that you don't completely understand. You're talking with your hands, or you're really looking in someone's eyes. And I think in those situations, people are always there to meet you. People are always there with kindness. And so I'm not scared of traveling, because I believe in people.
Listening to you, too, you should get work as a travel agent, because I would go wherever you said to go, I'll tell you right now.
Well, we'll pick somewhere good.
The journey certainly did not end in Paris, and we're going to talk about that and talk about this album, Another Country, and, of course, again, a beautiful CD. I'd love to go back to Bramble Rose. Can we do it?
Surely.
Let's go ahead and play one from Tift Merritt. Here's Virginia, No One Can Warn You. There's Tift Merritt, and from the CD Bramble Rose, Virginia, No One Can Warn You. Prior to you getting here on the set, we've been focusing on artists that really you can't, I won't use the word, lack of a better word, pigeonhole into one category. And your music has been compared to country, folk, blues. I mean, you do it all. Is that a fair assessment?
Yeah, I don't know that it's necessarily me doing it all, but I am very resistant to the idea that music isn't just music, that music is segregated into genres. I think that blues and folk and country and bluegrass and soul, they're all fingers of the same hand. So for me to stay in the lines, it seems a little bit like just painting in one color, or I don't know, it seems very limiting to me. It seems unnatural. And I think of the artists that I love, like Emmylou Harris or Ray Charles or Van Morrison. These guys were masters of so many different types of music, and they could call up a country shuffle or a soul groove, and I think it's always about the song at the end of the day, rather than a genre.
Right. Well, we're going to hear and talk about some of those songs off this album, Another Country. Stay with us. More with Tift Merritt when we come back. Hey, welcome back to GAC Nights. Spending time with Tift Merritt, talking about your latest album called Another Country. Wrote 11 songs on this album. Now, when we hear the story that you went to Paris, we would automatically assume that you wrote everything over there, but not the case, right?
No, not every single thing. I wrote a few of the songs when I came back to the States, and I finished the record kind of going between France and the United States But I think that albums are kind of conceived or born in a sort of rush of something creative that sends you off in a direction. And so that definitely, I came home from France with the outline of this record, the skeleton of this record, if not, you know, a large percentage of it, and the sort of identity of this record. So, yeah, it's the child of Paris.
Oh, the child of Paris. When I say the journey didn't end in Paris as well, because when you came back,
yes.
When you came back, I mean, you actually had, is it right to Laurel Canyon?
I went,
and there was inspiration for that too.
Well, we made this record in California, and at this point I had found apartments in Paris on Craigslist, so I was determined that we would find a house in California rather than live in a hotel room, and we found a house in Laurel Canyon, which is the canyon where so much musically happened in the 60s. Joni Mitchell lived there, Carole King lived there, Crosby, Stills and Nash lived there. So
talk about inspiration.
It was amazing, and you know, the whole band lived in a house together, and I would cook, and I had a garden, and when the people actually came back to move back into their house, I really was tempted to tie myself to the front porch.
They probably didn't want you to leave. They probably didn't.
It was great. It was such a nice experience, you know, to wake up in the mornings in the canyon and go walking, and the flowers were amazing. So it was a really nice experience.
Again, and I've said this before, and not to repeat myself, but the stories along with this album that you've told on your MySpace and your website, I have to ask you, on behalf of all fans, why don't you write a book? I mean, like publish like your journals or something. I mean, have you ever been approached or fans talked to you about that?
I wrote a lot. In fact, I really thought that I would be write stories rather than songs. It's sort of more my background. So I wrote a lot when I was in France, but I haven't really had time to make sense of it all. I mean, it was a lot. So I think the book, I'll get a few more chapters of life in it, but I'm really flattered that you would ask.
Well, it is. It's a beautiful story to listen to it.
Thank you.
You talk about the title of this album, Another Country. Of course, it is a song featured on this.
Yeah.
Representative really kind of wraps it up as to what this album is.
I think so, because you know, when I wrote the song, I was experiencing another country, and I was experiencing being outside of my own customs and my own life, really. So there was the geographical idea of other countries, but I started to think about how other people can be like other countries, and how often I feel untranslatable to people around me, or that you know, even to be close to someone, you know, there's a big distance that we all cross. So I felt like that was what I was really directly speaking to on this record, and when I wrote that song, I thought, all right, this is the roof.
And not to decipher and become analytical on this particular song, but really, it seems like somebody who's, you know, struggling to find themselves, get a little bit strong, and in the end, being so strong that they're able to help the person that they would love to ultimately be close with.
Surely, I mean, you know, it's not an accident. I have to put my own life into my work, or what else would I work with? But you know, I think that this is the most personal record that I have written, and I think it happened almost accidentally, by just way of being really far from any eyes that might judge, or anyone that might know me too well, or something like that. It was such a natural thing, being so far outside of my own life. I could really take intimacy a little bit further without being scared of the consequences. And the nice thing is, when I came home, everything was fine. So nobody threw rocks at me.
And when we look at the other songs in Broken, and you think, you know what you know, you thought was going to break you, actually you wind up mending from, and it really kind of wraps it up, the whole musically intertwined.
Yeah.
I want to go ahead and play the video of this.
Okay.
And this one, it looks as if you're in Europe somewhere. It's all black and white. Beautifully shot, though. It really looks like you had a great time shooting it.
Beautifully shot. A wonderful man named Martin Adkins shot this video, and he really helped me with the idea that we wanted to make a little tiny old French movie or a little tiny documentary about a day in the life of, me, I guess, and just have it be really natural. And we were actually in downtown LA.
Paris, France. It does. I feel like I'm in Europe when I'm watching this video. I'd love to go ahead and take a look at it. Tift Merritt, Broken, of course, that found on the CD, Another Country. Here it is. Tift Merritt and the beautiful video, Broken, that song found on the brand new CD, Another Country. And I look at that video, and the one thing, and you mentioned that you took French, through high school and college? And I think, and I'm going to say this wrong, but joie de vivre, right? The joy of life, is that right?
Yes.
See, thank you, everybody.
Yes.
You thought I couldn't do it, but I did it. That's like 5-6 years. What?
Joie de vie.
Joie de, joie de, how do you? Joie de vie. I want to talk about the language barrier. You touched on that a little bit. I couldn't handle it. I don't know how I would do, but more with Tift Merritt when we come back. Stay with us. Welcome back to GAC Nights, spending time with Tift Merritt, talking about the brand new album called Another Country, 11 songs on this album. Before the break, I attempted to speak French, and my French teacher's right now going, oh, you were horrible then, and you're still horrible now.
I think there's plenty of hope for you.
But really, to go over to France, and for those of people who are just joining us, Tift literally stepped out, went to France, lived in Paris for several months, and of course the inspiration behind this album. Did you have knowledge of the French language prior to?
I did. I'm not fluent by any stretch of the imagination, but I can get by. And I found that it really influenced my writing because I was so relieved to get back to the piano and be able to think and put my feelings down effortlessly. Mm-hmm. So it really kept things very simple and direct because I couldn't take simple and direct communication for granted. So,
was there one word that, like, for people that go over, is there like one word that's very helpful to know?
Merci.
Thank you. Yeah.
Pardon. Pardon.
So being very polite.
I think so. I mean, I always tell people I think that France and North Carolina, where I'm from, are parallel in strange ways because I think if you really look someone in the eye and are polite and say please and thank you, just like my mother taught me, you can get a long way.
You said you couldn't wait to get back to the piano and write, and you wrote in French this song that I'm talking about, and oh gosh, I'm going to say it wrong, but Mille Tendresses?
Mille Tendresses.
Mille Tendresses.
Yes.
Is it like a million?
A million tendernesses. Yes.
Okay, I got that right.
Yeah, absolutely.
So to sing and record in French, was this the first time that?
Yeah, and I definitely ran it by my French friends to make sure that I wasn't saying anything I didn't mean to say. But yeah, I really wanted to try, and in French there's something we don't have in English called a reflexive verb, and so you say I dress myself, I walk myself rather than I walk, and I became kind of fascinated with the idea of I hide myself, and that I hide myself in all of the small and tender things. So you will always be able to find me in the small and tender things. And I hide you there too, so I will always be able to find you.
So that is the translation pretty much of this song.
Yeah.
Have fans started going, because I have found artists that have recorded in a different language before, and you have to find out and go, well, what does it mean? Or what is it, I have everybody starting on like message boards going, well, how do you, Tiff, can you just translate for us?
I did translate it into English in the liner notes.
Oh, okay. So
but it was really I have a new respect for, translations of poems and books and songs, because to figure out the rhyme scheme, you have to really doctor it up.
It is.
It was hard.
And you have to be careful not taking the liberties that maybe you would take if it were in English, because well, now you're saying something completely different.
Yeah, exactly.
But I think one of the great things, too, about the French language is no matter what you're saying, it always sounds so romantic.
It does.
Did you find it to be an extremely romantic city, as people say it is?
I did, and my experience of Paris was really different than going and... I didn't feel like I had to buy a lot of things. I didn't feel like I had to go see everything.
So you weren't being a tourist. You were
I didn't feel like I had to eat the whole city and try everything. I just was looking at people and taking in day-to-day life and being very simple and writing a lot. So there was a lot of romance just in that. And then there's, you know, it's such an old city, and there's so many ghosts in that city that, I think that's a very romantic thing too. So
there's one of the tracks on this called "Morning Is My Destination," and I listened to that song, and I think, and I take so many things so literal, but I think, gosh, I wonder if the city really went to bed really that early, and it rained a lot. I mean,
oh, that's so funny. Actually, France, I really found myself on a great timeline in France, because I'd wake up late, because I'm a musician and I wake up late, and I would still be 6 hours ahead of everybody I do business with, so I could get my business done and be up before my mother. And then, stores don't really open till 11. People don't go in the street until a little late morning, and then dinner is at 9, and the city comes alive. So they really have a rock and roll schedule.
It's prime for an artist to live there then, right?
Yeah, it was great. But, morning is my destination. I sometimes have insomnia when I write, and I end up seeing dawn. And I think, those are the hard hours to get through. And I'm always so relieved when I see the morning light come in. I think, okay, everything's going to be okay. I'll be tired today, but I made it through the night, well, it is as they say.
It's a beautiful, beautiful song.
Thank you.
There is a stand-in on the song, and something that seemed different from the rest, and I'm talking about "My Heart Is Free." Talk a little bit about the inspiration on that. And I didn't know if you meant it metaphorically, because it talks about Normandy and, of course, being in France.
Yeah, well, I had a cousin who was a soldier in World War I. He was actually a pilot, and he was killed in France. And I just kept thinking about him over there and dying there. And I think it's important to try to be. I wanted to speak from his point of view in a very personal way of what he must think looking back on what he went through, or war in general, and I felt that was really the best way for me to tell that story in a very personal way.
Did you play it for your family? I would think that would be an emotional experience for everybody.
Yeah, well, it's a funny thing, because he was killed in World War I. We didn't really know him, but he was in love with my great-grandmother, who I look a lot alike, and he was a writer. So I don't know, you have those people in your family that you think,
and they're around.
Yeah.
A great album again, and such a pleasure to spend some time with you. Real quick, because we have to say goodbye, but Tift, the name. Family name. Tift Merritt, it is a pleasure. Another Country, the CD, I had asked. 11 songs on this album. Be sure to check it out. Well, that's all the time we have right here for GAC Nights. Good night, everybody. Thanks for watching.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you for watching Cleveland Live Music. If you like what you see, hit the subscribe button. There's further patronage information in the video descriptions below. Thanks for all the support and making the channel grow.